Hey guys, welcome back to another Division 2 build video. So in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down 3 of the best striker setups for higher difficulty content. So whether you're open world farming or running legendary activities, these setups are pretty solid and should make your runs a lot smoother. So guys, thank you so much for being here, and without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so this first striker setup stacks a lot of weapon damage and utilizes the power of the Harrier Pride exotic backpack. This backpack basically provides your agent with both weapon damage and damage resistance. So it's incredibly viable and effective, especially when it's paired with Striker. This is because both the Harrier Pride backpack and Striker function in a very similar way. So they increase your overall weapon damage by landing shots. So Harrier Pride in a sense is like Striker if it were to be an exotic. In other words, if Striker had to be compressed into an exotic piece, Harrier Pride would be the result. Now I'm also running this with the Big Alejandro, which is an exotic LMG from the 1st Division. Pretty cool that the developers brought it back. But this weapon also grants an additional increase in weapon damage. So with the talent cover shooter, every bullet fired while in cover increases your weapon damage by 1% up to 100%, and it will last for 15 seconds. However, getting a kill while in cover will reset the duration. So if you can manage to get like fast chain kills, you're basically extending that 15-second duration, right? So you get to keep that bonus weapon damage active for much longer, but just keep in mind that reloading or swapping your weapon will cancel the bonus. For the secondary weapon, I'm currently running the Lexington, but you can go with whatever you want. We will mainly be using the Big Alejandro anyway. Now for the mask, a striker mask with armor, critical hit damage, and a critical hit chance mod. And for the vest, a Bellstone armory piece with armor, critical hit chance and damage, with another critical hit chance mod. And you get a 1% armor regeneration bonus from having one piece equipped, which isn't much, but it helps a bit with survivability. Now for the talent, I'm running Obliterate, which is an amazing talent for any DPS setup. Obliterate will basically increase your total weapon damage by 1% for 10 seconds upon landing critical hits, and it maxes out at 20 stacks, so you're getting a nice 20% bonus weapon damage at full stacks. Also, and I'm sure many of you guys already know this, but whenever you land a critical hit, not only do you get that bonus weapon damage, but that 10-second duration gets reset. So basically, there's no cooldown, which makes it much easier to maintain full stacks and keep that 20% increased weapon damage active for as long as you're in combat. For the holster, a striker holster with armor and critical hit chance. Then for the knee pads, a third piece of striker with armor and critical hit chance. And for the gloves, the final piece of striker with armor and critical hit damage. Now, many of you already know this, but for anyone who's new to the game with striker, you get both a 15% weapon handling and rate of fire bonus for having 3 pieces equipped. Then for 4 pieces, you unlock the striker's gamble talent. And the striker's gamble talent is what makes striker so viable. With striker's gamble, each weapon hit will increase your total weapon damage by 0.65%. This stacks up to 100 times, so at full stacks, you're essentially getting up to 65% weapon damage with this particular setup. Now with the Harrier Pride backpack, you get all 3 of the core attributes, so weapon damage, armor, and skill tier, as well as the talent rebalance. So getting kills and hitting enemies 3 times will build red stacks, and each stack will grant you 0.5% weapon damage. Now, on the other hand, getting hit 3 times will build blue stacks, and each stack will provide your agent with 0.5% damage resistance. Then once you reach 80 stacks, which is the max, you will lose the stacks and receive a separate bonus of damage resistance per red stack and weapon damage per blue stack. So the bonuses you receive essentially flip once you reach max stacks. Now for the skills, I'm running Fortified Smart Cover and Reviver Hive. Smart Cover goes great with the Big Alejandro since you need to be in cover anyway, to activate the weapon talent, and the Reviver Hive is great if you're running solo. The Reviver Hive is a lifesaver, especially on higher difficulties. As far as weapon alternatives, you can go with the Pestilence if you would rather play with LMGs, or you can go with any of the popular AR exotics, like the St. Elmo's Engine, Eagle Bearer, or even the Chameleon. You also have high-end options as well. So excellent high-end alternatives, on the other hand, are the Lexington, Carbine 7, or the Honey Badger. And if you decide to use a high-end option like the Lexington, then for the talent you can use Killer. Killer works out great with Striker because it grants you a decent amount of critical hit damage, and Striker doesn't provide any critical hit damage or chance bonuses whatsoever. Now, I went with Gunner for a few different passive talents, but mainly for the 10% armor on kill. That 10% is not a lot, but you will get a lot of kills with this setup, so it may be helpful. Also, if you're going to be using the big Alejandro, you have the option to use both the barrage and emplacement talents. These talents will help increase your weapon handling and rate of fire. Gunner is designed for LMG builds, but if you're going to be using an assault rifle, you can still benefit from these talents, especially the 10% armor on kill bonus. And just for anyone who may be curious, here are the weapon stats. So 46% critical hit chance and 81% critical hit damage. This is considered extremely low, but remember, there is a lot of weapon damage being stacked on this setup. With all that weapon damage coming from Striker, Harrier, Pride, and the big Alejandro, it compensates for the low critical hit damage. So now, what about something that can be played at long range? In my experience, long range combat definitely has great benefits, especially if you're running content on anything higher than challenging. As many of you know, the NPCs on higher difficulty are absolutely relentless, especially on Legendary and Master. So if you're running Legendary Strongholds or the Summit, fighting at long range should give you plenty of time to react to UAV drones, mini tanks, grenadiers, or what have you. The only real downside of fighting at long range is that your damage declines the further you are from a target, and this is due to bullet drop. However, there is a weapon talent that I'm using to kind of counter this effect. This setup doesn't have as much survivability as the first one since there's no armor regeneration, but there is way more damage on this build, mainly due to having the Striker Vest and Tinkerer Mask, which always allows me to have 2 weapon talents on my primary weapon. This is a solid setup, but if you prefer playing up close and aggressive, like if that's more of your playstyle, the third Striker setup I'll be showcasing right after this may pique your interest. So let's check this out. For the primary weapon, I'm running the Carbine 7 with the talent Killer, and for the secondary weapon, I'm running the FAL with Ranger. Now with Killer, killing an enemy with a critical hit grants 70% critical hit damage for 10 seconds. And with Ranger, your weapon damage gets amplified by 2% for every 4 meters that you are away from your target. And just in case anyone didn't know, amplified damage is not the same as weapon damage. Amplified damage is multiplicative, hence why it's called amplified, right? So whenever you see amplified weapon damage, it's going to be greater than just the basic weapon damage increase, okay? Hopefully that makes sense. Now with the Tinkerer Exotic Mask equipped, it basically allows me to have both of these talents active on my primary weapon. So I'm getting both Killer and Ranger. However, this can only happen under one condition. Both weapons need to be members of the same weapon category. So for example, the Carbine 7 and FAL are both assault rifles. So if you wanted to use an SMG instead, just make sure that, for 1, it's not an exotic or named weapon. And 2, you have 2 SMGs equipped with 2 different talents that don't require you to swap weapons. And you can check under your status bar for the Alpha Bridge icon to see if it's active. If it's working, the icon should be orange. If not, it will be red. Now for the backpack, I'm running Grupo for the additional critical hit damage that you get from having just one piece equipped, with weapon damage and crits. And for the talent, I went with Vigilance. So Vigilance will increase your total weapon damage by 25%. However, taking damage disables this buff for 4 seconds. But don't worry about that, because I'll show you how you can prevent that in just a moment. But for the Striker pieces, armor and critical hit chance for the vest, holster, and knee pads, then armor and critical hit damage for the gloves, and for the skills, the Ballistic Crusader Shield and Reviver Hive. The Ballistic Shield is optional since this is a long-range setup, but it helps to prevent or delay the Vigilance buff from getting disabled, since your shield doesn't count as you getting hit. So that's one way to prevent having the Vigilance buff disabled, okay? Also, for those who are new, having the Striker Vest equipped will actually increase your weapon damage significantly. So with the Striker Vest, you get the talent Press the Advantage. And this talent basically increases max Striker gamble stacks from 100 to 200. So that's double the normal amount. And for the weapon stats, about 100k weapon damage. with 56% critical hit chance and 128% critical hit damage. This next striker setup is easily one of my personal favorites. It offers the most survivability of the three, thanks to the exotic Memento backpack, and the damage is great. So this will probably be the most ideal option if you like to run solo, since this striker setup offers way more survivability than the previous setups. The addition of the Memento backpack makes a huge difference since it offers armor regeneration, bonus armor, and weapon damage. The only hassle with Memento is that in order to build stacks, you have to collect trophies. And for those who don't know, trophies are the little icons that drop from downed enemies. So whenever you eliminate an enemy with Memento, they will drop a trophy that you will need to collect. Initially, it will be a hassle, but once you start collecting those trophies and building stacks of weapon damage and armor regeneration, you're gonna see a huge difference, especially in your damage. So for this setup, I went with the St. Elmo's Engine Exotic Assault Rifle. The St. Elmo's Engine is easily one of the most viable exotic weapons in the game. It's super stable and accurate, comes with a large magazine size, and it also grants shock rounds after landing 100 shots. So the St. Elmo's Engine comes with the talent Actum Est. Shooting an enemy with this weapon will give you 1 stack, and after reaching 100 stacks, the next magazine will be 100% filled with shock ammo. So once you get those shock rounds, you can basically have a bit of crowd control on the NPCs. And for the gear pieces, for the holster, I went with the Picaro's holster for the increased weapon damage. Picaro's comes with a 10% weapon damage attribute. And for the backpack, the legendary exotic Memento bag. So, like I mentioned earlier, with Memento, the enemies you kill will drop a trophy. Collecting those trophies will give you both a short and long-term buff. The short-term buff will only last for 10 seconds, but it also scales with the number of core attributes on your build. So, for example, since I have 6 armor core attributes, I just times this number by 6, and that's 60% bonus armor that I'll be getting. And since I only have 1 weapon damage and skill tier core coming from Memento, I'll get 5% weapon damage and skill efficiency. Now, for the secondary weapon, I'm running a name model of the ACS-12 shotgun. It helps build striker gamble stacks quickly, especially if you have the striker vest equipped. You can reach 200 stacks super fast. This is the rock and roll model, and it comes with a 50% increased magazine capacity. And for the weapon specialization, I went with Gunner. Firewall is also great if you don't mind running the ballistic shield. With Firewall, you get the striker shield variant that gives you a pretty decent damage boost. You also get access to the Bull Rush passive talent, and this basically gives you 30% bonus armor while transitioning from cover to cover. As far as weapon alternatives, you have tons of options. You can go with the Chameleon, Strega, Pestilence, or the Lexington. The Lexington would be a great option. Now, one last thing I wanted to mention, I like to run with armor, so that's why I went basically all blue for the core attributes. But this is just my preference, so feel free to switch it up on your end to fit your playstyle. So you can go 3 blue and 3 red, for example, right? Or you can even go 3 red and 4 blue, which wouldn't be possible without the exotic piece, because you're getting all 3 cores from Memento. So that's another benefit with this piece. And if you're new and maybe wondering where to farm for this backpack or even the St. Elmo's Engine, you can easily get either of them from Countdown. And you can access Countdown from the map, so just pull up your map and it will be right above DZ East. So the Penco Fairview power plant. And what's great is you can even increase your chances by selecting targeted loot. This will allow you to narrow your loot drops down to a specific category. So if you want to farm for the St. Elmo, for instance, you can select assault rifles. And if you wanted to go for Memento, you can select backpacks. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave them for me in the comment section. Keep it cool, keep it classy, and see you in the next video. Peace out.